Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis dated 27th November 2024. From today's newspaper, these are the 10 articles that I have taken, but to be very precise, all the 10 are not from Hindu. There is one article that I have taken from Hindustan Times as well, so that the coverage will be much more comprehensive, which will help you answer the questions which are asked in the civil services examination. If you like these initiatives that we are taking, please do hit the like button, and if you are yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Let me start the discussion, but before that, a very important announcement. Starting 29th November 2024, we are launching the Ignite batch for the English medium civil services aspirants. If you're interested, these are the courses that we are launching, the details of which are provided in the link which is provided in the description below. Please do check out. And the speciality of these two courses is that if you purchase any one of them, if you get a subscription for any one of them, and if you do not clear the civil services examination, we guarantee that we will extend your subscription by 12 more months so that you'll be able to clear at least in the next round. With that caveat, let me start the discussion. The first article, Republic to Republic of Unequals. Yesterday marked the 75th year of adoption of Constitution of India. That is essentially 26th November is celebrated as a Constitution Day. Before it was basically celebrated as a Constitution Day, it was also celebrated as a Law Day. But in 2015, please remember, the Government of India has changed this from Law Day to the Constitutional Adoption Day. And like I said, yesterday marked the 75 years of adoption of Constitution. Now regarding this, multiple articles are there in Hindu newspaper and many other newspapers as well. But there is one very important editorial which is provided in the Hindu regarding the Constitution and the outcome in terms of economic events in India. What are the important points? What are the important things that you need to understand? Let's start. So point number one, the author says, in Indian Constitution, there are multiple provisions which have been implemented in the form of articles which will guarantee or which will provide for promotion of equity, promotion of liberty. For example, the two articles which are mentioned in this editorial are one, Article 38(2), which basically talks about the duty of the state to ensure that the inequalities in income are reduced. The income inequalities are reduced, which is mentioned in the Article 38(2). And the Article 39(c) also states that India has to ensure that the economic system should not result in concentration of wealth. In concentration of wealth and the means of production, which will hurt the common people or the common man. Now, what is the meaning of these two articles? Much more importantly, please make a note of this. Both Article 38 and 39 are part of direct principles or direct principles of state policy, DPSP. Right? Basically, these are part of DPSP, and DPSP covers from Article 36 to Article 51. The Part 3 is fundamental rights and Part 4 is the DPSP. What is the important difference here? It is mentioned in the editorial as well. The DPSPs are not legally enforceable in India. These are not legally enforceable. That is, you cannot go to a court and file a petition against the government because they are not ready, because they are not implementing Article 38(2) or Article 39(c) and they are not reducing the income inequalities or wealth inequalities. You cannot approach judiciary citing these two articles and file a case on the government. That is, in simple, the meaning of legal enforceability. So, author says when we implemented the constitution, under DPSPs, we had multiple provisions, even under articles such as under the fundamental rights. We have articles which will provide liberty, freedom to the people. But the government post 1991, the government of India post 1991 has implemented LPG reforms. LPG in a nutshell stands for liberalization, privatization and globalization. So the government from 1991 implemented LPG reforms, under which many reforms or many measures and steps were implemented by the government in order to promote liberalization, which is essentially deregulation, withdrawing of regulations or the controls in the market. Privatization, where government basically started selling ownership in the entities that were under the control, under the ownership of the government. And also globalization, under which the foreign entities were allowed to enter into India. The FDI regulations were relaxed. The FEMA regulations were introduced, etc., which has led to more of, let's say, the trade or more of integration between India with the rest of the world. So the contention of the author here is very simple. On one side, we have provisions in the articles such as Article 38(2) and Article 39(c), which basically make it the duty of the government, or it is requiring the government to ensure there is no wealth concentration and there is no income issue or income inequalities in the society. But on the other side, the government has also implemented the LPG reforms, which has actually led to, again this is the contention of the author, which has actually led to higher income inequalities in India, higher wealth inequalities in India. Is it not the failure of the government? Is it not the meaning that we are not implementing the provisions of the constitution in a right manner, that is in the letter as well as in spirit? And to buttress the argument, the author says, look at the judgments of Supreme Court of India. There have been multiple judgments which have been issued by the Supreme Court, which basically reinforce what is provided in Article 38 and Article 39. And those who are wondering, before I go forward, those who are thinking, sir, in one of the article you're talking about income inequality, and in another article you're talking about wealth inequality. Are these not one and the same? Your argument will be, sir, I believe both income and wealth are both one and the same. Absolutely no. Income essentially talks about what is the salary, what is the earnings that you keep on doing. Whereas the wealth refers to the sum total of all the assets that you are owning. So the wealth is a bigger term or another term, and income is another term. So please be very careful with both of the differences. So the argument on one side is we are supposed to reduce income inequality and wealth inequality. And on the other side, the wealth and both income inequality has increased in India. Now, what is the proof? What is the proof that all of these have increased, or the gap between the income and wealth between the people or amongst the people has increased? To prove the point, the author has mentioned certain very important reports. I have taken one of them here. Multiple reports are mentioned. I have taken one of them. That is the Wealth Inequality Report. The Wealth Inequality Report, which basically is published by World Inequality Lab. Now, what does the report say? Although the report mentions so many other things, I am not going to discuss all of them. Focus on only the income gap that has existed in India and what has happened in the recent times, and the wealth inequality that has existed and what has happened in the recent times. According to the latest report titled Billionaire Raj in India, the World Inequality Lab basically states that the income inequality and the wealth inequality in India have increased in recent times. They have increased in the recent times. And it is a worrisome factor or a worrisome issue because the inequality that is existing today is much higher compared to what it was before independence in India. I'll repeat. What is the inequality today in India is much higher compared to what it was before independence in India. And the argument of the report is that after independence, the government of India decided to follow the concept of certain features of socialism. Because mind you, India adopted a type of a socialism initially after independence by the name of Nehruvian socialism. Socialistic pattern of the society was one of the objectives of the INC. And as a result of these kind of, let's say, policies which were adopted by the government, over a period of time, the income inequality that existed actually reduced. And to prove the point, please have a look at the graphs which are provided here. Please have a look at the graph. Specifically, I'm talking about the graph which is present in the bottom right side. Look at this particular graph. What you will generally see is after independence, the gap which existed started going down. But after reforms were announced by the government, such as LPG reforms, you will see again the gap rising, widening between the top 10% of the people and bottom 50% of the population which is existing in India. And if you're wondering, sir, what does the graph simply say? I'm not able to read the meaning or infer anything from the graph. The graph basically represents how much of the income is earned by the bottom 50% of the population and top 1% of the population. And the graph represents the time period from 1951, after independence, mind you, 1951 and right till 2022. And you will be able to see that the red color line which represents basically the bottom 50% of the population, and the blue color line which represents the top 1% of the population. The bottom 50% of the population, how much income they earn has decreased, has fallen. And the top 1% of the population, how much is their income? It has actually increased, taken over, right, the bottom 50% of the population's income, which basically means the income inequality that existed was lower. But after the reforms of the LPG which were implemented by the government, the income inequality has increased. Is it not a cause of concern? Is it not a worrisome outcome of the LPG reforms that we have implemented? Right? Yes, this is basically the argument of the author which is provided in the article. In addition to this report, the author also talks about multiple other reports. For example, there is one more report which is cited here, which takes the studies that have been done when the PLFS is conducted. PLFS stands for Periodic Labor Force Survey. The PLFS is generally used to calculate how much of the labor or how much of the working population is getting jobs, how much of the labor force is not able to get the jobs, etc., etc. According to this survey or the findings of the survey, have a look at the data here. The average monthly wages, right, basically earned by the top 10% of the population in India is on an average, I repeat, on an average, 25,000 rupees. It is again on an average. It is about 25,000 rupees. And on the other side, the bottom 50% of the population is, bottom 90% of the population. After top 10, remaining 90% of the population is earning below 25,000 rupees on an average on monthly basis according to the PLFS data, which again reinforces the point, hammers the point that there is a huge amount of income inequality that is existing in India. So the argument of the author is we have not been able to credibly implement or successfully implement the wishes of the constitutional makers, which was basically represented in the form of Article 38(2) as well as Article 39(c), which also means that the government in the coming days has to implement certain policies, has to take certain steps, etc., in order to reduce the wealth inequality as well as income inequality. That is basically the summation of the article which is provided here. But let's go beyond what is given in the article. Let's go beyond that, because I have a slightly different opinion compared to what is given in the article. Although the author says the income inequality has increased, wealth inequality has increased, it feels like the policies of the government of India have actually led to this kind of a income and wealth inequality. Please understand this. The situation of Indian economy back in the year 1991 was completely different. We are sitting in 2024 and we are trying to evaluate what were the policies of the government which were implemented back in 1991. We were facing BOP crisis. The inflation rate was very, very high. The government expenditure in a budget, around 37% of the total expenditure was used just to pay the interest on the loans which were taken by the government. The performance of many of the public sector companies or the public sector undertakings was not satisfactory. So the situation in 1991 demanded that the government make certain policy changes. And the policies which were changed were basically named as ELPG or New Economic Policies. The point of difference I generally feel regarding this article is that the focus is on the fact that income inequality and wealth inequality have increased. Yes. Having said so, there are also certain points that you need to make a note of so that you can balance your answer. You can balance the argument. What are the points in favor of, let's say, the policies of the government? According to the latest data which is published by the government of India, the number of poor people in case of India has actually decreased. Correct? It has actually decreased according to the latest data published by government. And it is not fair to simply say in the last 2.5 decades, or let's say in the last 30 plus years, government has not taken any kind of reforms to address the problem of income inequality or wealth inequality. For example, the 11th 5-year plan. The 11th 5-year plan talked about inclusive growth. In fact, the central theme of 11th 5-year plan as well as the 12th 5-year plan has been the focus on the inclusive growth itself. Government of India should not just promote growth, it should also promote development. According to World Bank's definition, inclusive growth refers to the pace and pattern. Please remember the definition. The pace and pattern of growth both are connected to each other. Hence, both of them must be addressed together. That is, the government policies should not always target higher GDP growth rate. At the same point of time, government should also ensure the benefits of the growth will reach to other sections of the society as well. And that has been the endeavor of the government. It has been the central theme of the government in the last 15 or 20 years, whereby you are seeing that there are multiple policies of the government which are no doubt promoting growth. But at the same point of time, there are the same kind of policies on the other side which are promoting development as well. Just to give you certain points so that you can use this in, let's say, the mains answer writing, you can use a mind map like this. I've created a mind map. Please have a look at this. In the center, I've kept the idea of inclusive growth. That is essentially the promotion of growth and development of Indian economy. And surrounding the concept of inclusive growth, I've written many schemes of the government of India. Again, I'm talking only about the government of India here. Many schemes of government of India which have been implemented, which can be attributed to promotion of growth as well as a development in India. For example, for let's say housing assistance, government of India has Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. In fact, there was an article a couple of days ago which we have discussed in the CNA. Today also there is one more article. I'll just give you the gist of the article. For promotion of food security, government has implemented NFSA, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. For promotion of education, right to education is there. For development in rural parts of India, you have electricity schemes. And you have electricity schemes. Earlier we had Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Grama Jyoti Yojana. Right? We have aspirational districts program. We have Bharat Net program which aims to provide high-speed internet connectivity to many of these rural parts of India. So on one side, you can see that these kind of schemes will promote development, specifically targeting rural parts of India. At the same point of time, you can also talk about many other schemes of government of India which will promote growth aspect, that is higher GDP. For example, Make in India, liberalization under foreign direct investment, the PLI, production linked incentive, etc. All of these will promote growth aspect of the economy. In order to balance your argument much better, you can also mention certain protection policies, that is environmental protection policies. Government of India promoting FAME initiative. Government of India targeting 2030 to ensure there is a zero carbon emission, net zero emission in railways. 2070 net zero emission for overall India. So that you will have a very, very balanced approach if at all these kind of questions are asked, whether the policies of the government of India are they the reasons for rising income inequality as well as a wealth inequality in the Indian economy. Done? So these are certain important points I just wanted to discuss with you people regarding the editorial which has been mentioned, which talks about, right, let's say the constitutional provisions as well as a connection to the LPG reforms and the shift of focus of government of India to promote more of a growth and sacrificing welfare of the people, which actually led to higher income and wealth inequality according to the article given here. But to balance the answer, I've also given the counterpoint that you can use to balance the answer. Okay, so associated with this, MCQ, consider the following statements. DPSPs, just like the fundamental rights, are legally enforceable. Part 3, Part 4 and Part 9B of Indian Constitution are associated with subjects DPSP, FRs and cooperative respectively. There is a particular reason why I have given Part 9B. Don't worry, I'll tell you the connection when I discuss the key answer. The World Inequality Report is published by World Bank. I've given 3 statements. How many of the above statements is or are correct? Try it. The right answer or the key answer, I'll discuss it at the end. I've also given a mains answer writing assignment for purpose of practice for you. The government with implementation of LPG reforms has been responsible for the rising inequality in India. Evaluate the statement. Evaluation means you will have to write points in favor of the statement and against the statements and give a proper conclusion. Right? You can use the points that we have discussed some time ago to buttress your answer. Okay. Next article, one more editorial. An ideal way to treat India's corneal blindness problem. Right? What are the important points here? Listen to me very carefully. A lot of you will decide to ignore this article. Do not ignore it. Because under the certain GS paper, there are health related issues which are covered in the mains syllabus. Now have a look at this. Look at the points first. Whenever you talk about corneal blindness, in case of India, this is contributor, second largest contributor to kind of blindness. Every year, more than, right, more than million people in India suffer because of corneal blindness. I'm pretty sure by now you must be having this kind of a doubt. Sir, what is corneal blindness? I'll address that question. But before that, I said this is the second largest contributor to blindness in India. What is the first largest contributor? It is cataract. Remember this. In terms of blindness, the highest number of people face blindness in India because of cataract. And the second cause of highest blindness numbers in India is the corneal blindness. Just to give you a basic point here, listen to me very carefully. This is a cross section of the eye. This is how eye looks like in a cross sectional view. And the outer layer that you can see, the outer part of this eye is cornea. The cornea is that particular transparent layer which covers or which is the outer part of the eye. And this cornea, please remember this, doesn't have any kind of blood veins. It doesn't have any kind of a blood veins. Right? And I hope you understand the importance of blood veins is that when the blood travels through the veins, oxygen is also carried. In case of cornea, there are no blood vessels, right? No vessels whatsoever. No blood vessels. Remember this particular point. It's a tissue, but doesn't have any kind of a blood vessels. Generally, it will get oxygen through, right? Let's say the air when you keep the eye open and when you're sleeping. Because I know some of you will simply say, sir, I'm sitting with closed eye listening to your lecture. How does, the cornea get oxygen then? In such a case, the the oxygen will be supplied through multiple capillaries. So it doesn't have any kind of a blood vessel. Remember that particular point. Point number 3, whenever you talk about corneal blindness, what is the issue here? What is the corneal blindness? Either because of a scratch, right? Or because of certain accident, or because of certain ailments or infection, etc. The corneal blindness will be same, where people will not be able to see clearly, right? That is basically the blindness, corneal blindness. Whereas in case of cataract, please remember, the effect will be on the lens. The impact will be felt on the lens. That is, the lens will be having a cloudy structure. That's the reason. The cataract essentially will look like, or whenever a person has a cataract, it will look like when he's seeing through a cloud. It is a cloudy structure. They are not able to see outside, or let's say other side of the cloud. A cloudy like structure will be made in the lens. So cataract is associated with lens, whereas corneal blindness is associated with the outermost layer. Like I said, in case of India, millions of people annually suffer because of corneal blindness. And what this article talks about is, what is the solution to it then? What is the solution? Listen to me very carefully. Whenever you talk about, let's say, any kind of a solution, you will have to talk from the supply side as well as the demand side. Okay, I'm using economics to explain this. You will have to talk about supply side as well as the demand side. Okay, supply and demand. Now, what is the issue of supply and demand? In case of India, I said, annually millions of people suffer because of corneal blindness. But only around 30% of these, you will see that there is a cornea transplant, and they will be able to see later after the transplant is done. On the other side, around 70% plus of the population which is suffering from the corneal blindness, they will not be able to get the transplant on time. There is a huge waiting list in multiple states because they are not able to find the, let's say, cornea. That basically will take us to the supply side now. What is the issue then? Why we are not able to meet the demand with the supply? No doubt, understand this, no doubt, there are multiple deaths which are taking place, multiple deaths. But the problem is, right now in India, we are basically following a system called as opt-in system. Opt-in system, What do you mean by opt-in system? Under the law, basically called as a THOTA, the act which was implemented from 1994, which stands for the Transplantation, the Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act. Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act of 1994. According to the laws, if a person wants to donate their eyes, they will have to register. They will have to provide their consent. And once the person passes away, the hospital or the officials will seek the, let's say, nod of the immediate relative, and then basically take the cornea and use it to transplant it to other people who are on the waiting list. This is generally the concept of an opt-in method or consent method that we are practicing in India. But last month, the government of India has talked about a new type of a proposal. What is a new type of a proposal? There is something that they want to introduce by the name of presumed consent. Understand this. The government wants to introduce something by the name of presumed consent concept or principle. Under the presumed consent, if a person passes away and if they have not specifically said that I do not want to donate my cornea or eyes, I'll repeat the statement. Under the presumed consent concept, if a person passes away and if the person has not categorically stated or declared that they do not want to donate their eyes, in such cases, by default, you will be assumed to be a donor and your eyes will be taken for donation. Is the point clear to all of you? You will be presumed to be a donor if you have not specifically opted out of the system. That is the concept of a presumed consent. With this, the government as well as many experts argue that we will be able to address the issue of the cornea or eye donations in India. This is the first important point which they want to address the issue on the supply side. Second very important concern in case of supply side is whenever you want to supply, or let's say whenever you want to take the cornea or let's say the parts of the eye and transplant it to another human being, you need the surgeons, you need the doctors. We do not have sufficient number of infrastructure, sufficient number of the cornea, let's say eye donation banks in India. According to the article provided here, the number of eye donation banks which will collect and basically transport the parts of the eye, the number is in the range of 12 to 14. It should be above 50 in number. And one more concern regarding the supply side is, we should on an ideal basis be conducting more than 200 cornea transplants on day-to-day basis on an average every day. That is also not being met. So these are the three issues on the supply side. The article focuses on the first issue, that is the presumed consent. What are the issues? What would be the advantage? Let me discuss about that. With implementation of the presumed consent, as of now, we are discussing, we are deliberating it. It is not yet implemented. With implementation of the presumed consent, what will happen is that, like I said, once the person passes away, if they have not explicitly chosen to opt out, or if they have not decided to give a declaration that they do not want to donate, then the government automatically will treat them as a donor and basically accept their eye parts in the form of donation. The advantage of this is, listen to me carefully. Right now, many of the people, when they pass away, their immediate relatives do not consent, do not agree to donate their eyes. Do not agree. Reason being, they feel that once the cornea is taken out, that the face will be disfigured. Very valid concern. They feel that the face will be disfigured. But the argument of the experts is that cornea is the outermost layer. We will simply take it out. Nothing, no damages are going to happen to the face or even to the other parts of the eye. The experts argue that, but the problem is no sufficient, let's say, knowledge is there with the immediate relatives of the people who have passed away, hence they will reject it. That is the point number one. Point number two is the acceptance of the cornea. When you need to collect the cornea, it is a very time sensitive matter. In 6 to 10 hours, you will have to take out and store it and then transplant it to another human being. But because there is a lot of paperwork involved, because there is so much of consultation involved, etc., it usually causes for a delay, or it will lead to delay. And after, let's say, 10 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours, etc., you can no more use the cornea of a passed away or deceased person. Now, if you go for a presumed consent, if you implement presumed consent model, then automatically you don't have to go through all of these problems. You can directly take, or you can accept the cornea of a deceased person and use it for transplantation. That is the advantage. Having said so, what is the issue with this model? What is the issue with the concept of introduction of presumed consent? Various experts argue that even in the countries which have the highest rates of donations, I repeat, even in the countries which have highest rates of donations such as Spain, Portugal or United States, they have not implemented the concept of presumed consent. Even with that highest rate of donations, they do not have the concept of presumed consent. What they follow is a model which is called as a soft opt-in or required request. Soft opt-in or required request. What is this idea of a soft opt-in or required request? Listen to me carefully now. In many of the general hospitals in India, there is a model which is called as hospital cornea retrieval system. Hospital cornea retrieval system, or technically called as program. HCRP. HCRP. What will happen under HCRP? Once the person passes away, there is a grief counselor. The grief counselor will approach the immediate relatives, will provide the support system, but at the same point of time, the grief counselor will also talk about the importance of donation. The grief counselor will convey to the people, the immediate relatives, what can the person do, right? Even after the person has deceased or even after the person has passed away. He can provide life to so many people, etc., etc. And in many cases, once this kind of a grief counseling is provided, it has been seen in many cases, the immediate relatives have accepted to donate, to provide consent to donate, or to basically agree to donate the cornea for donation purposes or to other patients for transplantation. This kind of a system has been implemented in multiple general hospitals across India in multiple states. And the authors are basically pointing out that in the states which are implementing this kind of a model, the waiting list is not there. The patients are able to easily get access to these kind of, let's say, tissues, or in this case, the cornea, which is a tissue. They are able to get access very easily, and right, they are able to get a new lease of life. So the argument is essentially, right, can we emulate this model? Can we emulate this model, which is essentially a required request proposal or model, or a soft opt-in model, which can be used to increase the eye donations, reduce the waiting line, and or reduce the waiting list and the time period, and ensure that millions of people who are suffering because of the corneal blindness, which is treatable, can be addressed. So these are certain important points which are given in the article. Please do be very careful regarding this. Next, MCQ 35. Consider the following statements. The organ donations in India are regulated under THOTA Act of 1994. In eye donation, India is following the presumed consent model since 1994. Cornea tissue does not have any kind of a blood vessel. 3 statements are there. What is the right option? Do think of it. And right, I'll give you the key answer at the end of the session. Next article in the text and context page which is provided is the Sambhal Mosque controversy. Sambhal Mosque controversy. What has happened? Let me tell you in a gist what is the importance of the article given here. Please understand, back in 1991, the government of India introduced a new law. The name of the law is Places of Worship Act of 1991. Places of Worship Act of 1991. And what was the important provision under Places of Worship Act of 1991? According to this particular act, under one of the provision, whatever is the nature of a place of worship on the 15th August 1947, you cannot change the nature of the place of worship after that particular date. That is, in a nutshell, on 15th August 1947, let's say there is a place of worship which has been declared or which was seen as a temple. After 15th August 1947, you cannot change whatever is the nature of the place of the worship. It prohibited the kind of challenges which can be filed at the court or at the judiciary level to change the nature of place of worship. In a nutshell, understand this. In last couple of years, you must have seen multiple petitions filed at different courts where the petitioner is demanding, petitioner is asking that a place of worship such as mosque is not actually a mosque. It has been constructed above a temple, or a part of the mosque is a temple infrastructure, etc. Hence, the nature of worship or the place which should be changed now. Right? That has been the demand in recent times. Now, there is a particular reason why it has been happening in case of India, because please understand, point number one, the reason why this act was implemented, why this act was even introduced in India back in 1991 is because of the demand regarding Babri Masjid. That was the reason. And because the demand regarding Babri Masjid, or let's say the contention regarding Babri Masjid was before 1991, that controversy or that particular issue was not covered under the act. But in recent times, for example, the Gyanavapi Mosque, or for that matter, now the mosque in Sambhal, why they have been brought or why they are being discussed here? Reason is very simple. There are petitions which are being filed at the district court demanding that this is not a Muslim place of worship. In fact, there is a temple here. Part of this is a temple, or it has been constructed above a temple which was demolished by, right, let's say certain king. In the context of the Sambhal, please understand, the mosque here, according to the historians, there are two views. The mosque here is one of the mosques which has been constructed by Babur, right? Mughal Emperor Babur, who ruled from 1526 to 1530. Out of 3 mosques which are attributed to Babur, this is one of them. Whereas certain historians say, no, this cannot be attributed to Babur. It is a monument which has been constructed during Tughlaq era. So there are 2 points or 2 divergent viewpoints regarding who is actually responsible for the construction. But according to another section of the society, that is Hindus believe that this particular mosque has been constructed above a temple. And their argument is, according to Hindu tradition, the 10th avatar of Vishnu, 10th avatar of Vishnu, which is Kalki avatar, will basically be descending in Sambhal. Right? It will be in Sambhal. Hence, there is a temple here. We should be given the right to worship. The nature of worship should be changed. And there is a very important point to add here. Right? You also please remember this and make a note of this. These kind of petitions are being filed. One of the reason behind that is said to be the observation, not the judgment, not an order, the observation that was done by Justice or the former Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud. In one of the cases, he basically, let's say, observed that it is true, according to the Act of 1991, you cannot change the nature of place of worship. You cannot change it. But can we inquire into the nature? Can we inquire? If it is a place of worship, whatever is the nature, can we inquire into it? Although the Act of 1991 will not allow us to change, but can we inquire? Can we start an inquiry into the nature of the place of worship? That was the statement, that was the observation of the former CJI, which many experts say has opened the doors for many of such petitions to be filed at the court level. But before you start arguing, saying that, sir, but the petitions were filed even before the observations were made by Justice Chandrachud, another very important point is, according to the Act of 1991, the judiciary is not supposed to accept these petitions. But why many of the district courts, be it in Madhya Pradesh or be it in Uttar Pradesh, why these district courts are accepting the contention of the judges which are accepting the argument of the petitioners? Again, just accepting the argument, not issuing an order as of now. The reason which has been cited by the judges is these kind of places are beyond the provisions of Act of 1991. All of you able to understand this? These, the places which are brought under the contention here, these are not to be covered under the Act of 1991. These are above or beyond the Act of 1991. That is the precise reason such petitions which are being filed are being accepted by the judges. Again, please understand, accepted. Now, what is the issue? What has happened here? On 19th November, on November 19th, a petition was filed in a district court. And the district court basically said, okay, right, we accept the petition. What we want is a survey of the mosque to be conducted and a report should be submitted to us by 29th. Submit a report on 29th. On the same day itself, survey was conducted. And again, one more round of survey was conducted on 24th November. Right, on 24th November. Understand this, when the second round of survey was supposed to be conducted, there was a misinformation that was spread. There are two sides to argument. There was a misinformation that was spread. That is, according to certain people, water was flowing surrounding the mosque, and this led to certain suspicions that there was excavation or digging up that was happening within the mosque. And the groups of people gathered. Now the police say that we did not fire. We basically used a lathi charge. But again, the second group says, or the other group says, no, there was firing done by the police. They did not use a lathi charge. As a result of either whatever is the truth, investigations have been ordered. Investigations will be done, don't worry. But whatever be the issue, many people have lost their lives. 4 people have lost their lives. Many sections have been imposed. Entry of outsiders has not been allowed into this particular region now, because there is a concern that entry of outsiders might further fuel discontent amongst certain sections of the society, which might again vitiate the social strata, or let's say the social peace that has been established as of now. Done. So these are certain important points regarding what is the controversy around the Sambhal mosque here. And one more very important point, remember this, Sambhal's Jama Masjid is a protected monument. Protected monument or else protected national monument also means it has been declared as a monument of national importance. According to ASI website, it is declared as a national importance, and this also is listed in the list of centrally protected monuments of Government of India. And one more law, please make a note of this. It has been notified on 22nd December 1920 to be under Ancient Monuments Preservation Act of 1904. Done. So these are certain important points regarding what is happening in one of the place or one of the cities in Uttar Pradesh regarding a mosque dispute. Let me go to the next article now. Workers, farmer unions submit 12-point charter to President of India. They have submitted the 12-point charter to the President of India. And now please listen to me carefully. There were 2 articles in Hindu newspaper regarding this and many more articles in other newspapers as well. So what is the contention here? In the last couple of years, there has been certain demands from certain farmer unions and farmer groups. One of their arguments is that the government should announce a legalized MSP. Regarding this, multiple protests have been conducted. Multiple, let's say actions have been taken by the state governments as well as the central government to pacify the farmers, etc. But now, the workers as well as the farmer unions have submitted demands, that is a 12-point demands to the President of India, and they have requested that the President of India should look into it and direct the Government of India. Some of the demands, I've just given you some of the demands here. Some of them are rational, some of them are, let's say, I would simply say not so much rational. For example, have a look at this. The farmer unions as well as the labor unions want the Government of India to repeal the 4 labor codes. They want the government to repeal 4 labor codes. Yes, it is true that the Government of India has announced rationalization of labor codes in India or labor laws in India. Reason being, labor law is a very complicated subject in India. There were at a point of time more than 100 labor laws. So you want to attract investments, you want to protect the employees, etc. You cannot have so many labor laws. More than 30 labor laws have been grouped together to form 4 labor codes. And the states, many of them are yet to draft rules for the implementation. That was mentioned in yesterday's newspaper as well. Many of the states are yet to draft the rules. Hence, the implementation of the labor codes has been delayed in India. No doubt there are certain concerns of many stakeholders. The government better have consultations, or let's say take the viewpoint of all the stakeholders to resolve or to come to certain arrangement. Right? So, argument of these groups is that there should be a repeal of 4 labor codes. That would basically send us back again. No doubt consultation should be held. Stakeholder viewpoints should be taken. Certain, let's say, give and take should happen so that, right, all the stakeholders, because labor, no doubt, is one of the most important stakeholder in the whole system. No doubt their viewpoint should be taken, and certain arrangements, or let's say give and take, should happen in certain provisions where changes might be done to pacify the labor unions. So that is the first one. And the contractualization of labor, a very difficult demand. Reason being, the economy is so dynamic, so volatile, having full-time labor always is very difficult. Always having all the labor which is full-time labor is very, very difficult. And that is the precise reason the gig economy has thrived in India. The gig working market has increased or has become very famous in India nowadays. So to basically do away with the concept of a contract labor will be very, very difficult basically to satisfy this kind of a demand. MS Swaminathan committee has been mentioned here. They are demanding that the MS Swaminathan MSP formula should be adopted by the government. What was the recommendation of MS Swaminathan formula? It basically recommended that the government should take C2 as a cost of production to announce MSP. Their argument is the government should take C2, not A2 plus FL, to announce MSP, and using C2 plus 50%. The MSP should be given to the farmer. That will suddenly balloon the expenditure of government of India. No doubt farmers will be getting better amount of revenue under this, or earning more revenue under this, but the system or the issue is much more complicated. Now, to add to this particular point, I have taken one more article from Hindustan Times. On 23rd November, there was an article in Hindustan Times where they talked about the Supreme Court panel which has raised certain concerns regarding the farm crisis. Listen to me very carefully. The Supreme Court of India set up a committee. They have set up a committee. The committee is headed by Justice Nawab Singh. Justice Nawab Singh. This particular committee was set up by the Supreme Court to look into what are the problems, what are the issues faced in the agriculture, and can we have certain policies in order to satisfy the demands or the problems faced by the farmers. According to the report published in the Hindustan Times, they are saying, again this is according to the report that I am telling you, they are saying that the Nawab Singh committee report is in favor of legalization of MSP. It is in favor in the sense the committee is asking, can we look into the demand of the farmers? Can we satisfy this particular demand? The argument put forward by the committee report is that the farming sector is under a lot of distress. The farming sector is facing a very high amount of distress. The number of farmers who have committed suicides are very, very high in India. The farmers are not able to earn sufficient incomes, but on the other side, expenditure in the form of the money spent on inputs have increased for the farmers. So keeping in mind all of these particular factors, can Government of India now look into the demand of the farmers, that is legalization of MSP? In fact, that is also one of the demands put forward by the farmer unions in the 12-point charter. Implement national minimum wages. Again, they are demanding a national minimum wage of at least 26,000 rupees a month. 26,000 rupees a month. the implementation problem will be that if government implements this law, then whatever segments are covered under the law, all of them will have to pay minimum wages of 26,000 rupees. Again, a very difficult task. Comprehensive loan waiver for agriculture. Right? The loan waiver is never an answer, never a solution to problems faced in the agriculture sector. Because please understand, agriculture sector faces sectoral problems, structural problems, right? High dependence on monsoon, lower adaptation of micro irrigation, low implementation of mechanization, right? Let's say R&D in the form of the GM crops, right? There are so many structural problems faced by the agriculture sector. If the government announces a loan waiver, which have done in the past, many states have announced it, center also has announced it, no doubt a short-term relief will be provided, but it is not at all a long-term solution. In fact, I'm reminded of a statement given by an expert. The expert says, what agriculture requires is a surgery. What a loan waiver will do is provide a band-aid. I hope you understand the statement. What agriculture requires is a surgery. What loan waivers will do is basically act as a band-aid. So short-term relief, but never a structural solution. Ensure credit facilities to the farmers. This is true. Many of the farmers even today borrow money in a rural market, borrow money from, let's say, the money lenders who will charge a very, very high rate of interest, and the farmers suffer because of this. They fall into debt trap because of this. And there should not be any privatization of government-owned entities. No privatization of government-owned entities. Again, please understand, a very, very difficult task. Very difficult task. Thinking of, let's say, what are the objectives behind privatization that is done by the government. Okay, so these are some of the demands that have been given by the farmer as well as the labor unions to the President of India. Now, many of you will be thinking, sir, you are talking about an article from Hindustan Times. How do I read it? I don't have a subscription. How can I read multiple newspapers in a day? Right? You are expecting too much from me. I'm a UPSC aspirant. I don't have so much time. Absolutely correct. What you can do is, you can join my Telegram channel on weekly basis. On weekly basis, every Saturday, I provide a list of articles for the students or the learners to read from different newspapers to update your current affairs for GS Paper 3 Indian Economy paper, Indian Economy part. So you can join my Telegram channel, right, and take the benefits. Next article. Israel and Hezbollah agree for a ceasefire. Right? This is supposed to be implemented from Wednesday, that is today. Now, what are the important points here? Listen to me carefully. Israel, on one side, is having certain, right, let's say frictions, is on attack with, right, let's say the people from Gaza. When I say people, according to Israel, the terrorist. Right? There is a certain grouping in Gaza which is, right, fighting against Israel. That grouping name is basically Hamas. Okay, the Hamas is fighting against Israel, and on the other side, Israel is also on a fight or in a fight with another group which is present in Lebanon, right? And that particular group is basically, right, Hezbollah. Okay, so understand this. On two fronts, Israel is fighting, it is being attacked, it is retaliating. That has been happening for multiple months, right, as of now. And on all the sides, right, you talk about, let's say, people residing in Lebanon, or right, people in Israel, or even people in Gaza. Or in all the sides, there has been a huge amount of casualties. There have been huge amount of casualties. Now, in the month of September, USA and France tried to act as mediators. Right, I repeat, USA and France tried to act as mediators between, right, the group that is Lebanon as well as the Israeli officials, and they tried to bring certain peace or certain, right, let's say ceasefire agreement between both the parties. By the time it was, right, negotiated and implemented, there were pager attacks. There were multiple pager attacks wherein multiple people, essentially which were high-level officials or the operatives of Hezbollah were killed. Although Israel overtly or outrightly did not accept that they were the people behind these let's say the pager attacks, the Hezbollah group basically said it is the doing of the Israeli officials itself. So the talk of ceasefire, which was supposed to happen in the month of September, which was on the negotiation path, fell apart. And now again, USA and France have acted as mediators, and they have brought a ceasefire plan, which again, as of now, has been accepted by the cabinet of Israel. It is being viewed by the, let's say, even the Lebanon officials. And from today, it is supposed to be implemented. Now, what are the provisions? What are the proposals which have been provided under the ceasefire agreement here? Point number one, please listen to me very carefully. Point number one, the, let's say the forces, Israeli forces will withdraw, will move back, and the term, or let's say the actual movement has to happen, that is withdrawal has to happen. They will have to move below the blue line. That is essentially, please understand, the Israeli forces will have to come behind the blue line, meaning the blue line is an internationally accepted border between the Israel as well as Lebanon. Please remember this. This can be asked in the prelims. The blue line is the internationally accepted border line between Israel and Lebanon. So the Israeli forces will have to come behind the blue line, will have to move back behind the blue line. At the same point of time, they have also said that the Hezbollah forces, the forces of Hezbollah, will have to move above Litani River. Litani River. Litani River is present, basically in Lebanon like this. Again, this can be asked in prelims. Please be very careful. So the Hezbollah forces will have to move above the Litani River, that is beyond this particular region. And the Israeli forces will have to move behind the blue line, which is accepted, internationally accepted, the line of difference between, let's say, Lebanon and Israel. Now, when these forces will move apart like this, there is a buffer created, there is some space created. This space will have UN peacekeeping force as well as the forces of Lebanon. Is the point clear? The Lebanon forces as well as the UN peacekeeping forces will occupy this particular land, below the Litani River and above the blue line like this. And if any of the two parties violate it, then the other party is saying we will basically have the right to start an attack again. This has not been put in the ceasefire agreement, but both the parties are saying if any of the other parties starts an attack, will start to rearm, will start to acquire weapons, they'll start to dig the tunnels, etc., then we will have every right to start an attack against the other party. Now, whatever agreement provisions are there, whatever will be implemented, there will be one more group which is basically led by USA, which will have the monitoring or the overview of whether all the parties in the agreement are they implementing the provisions of the agreement or not. And this agreement, mind you, as of now has been signed for 60 days. This ceasefire agreement has been signed for 60 days, and the USA President, Mr. Joe Biden, said that this can be a starting point for a lasting, peaceful agreement which can be signed between both of these parties, which will basically, bring back the peace to this particular disturbed region. Done. So Mr. Netanyahu basically announced that he is in support of this ceasefire proposal with Hezbollah. Cabinet has approved, Israel cabinet has approved. It is supposed to be implemented from today. So these are certain points regarding the IR article here. Please be very careful. Next, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana funds have been swindled. What are the points here? Just certain important points, because in my earlier session, we have discussed PMAY, one more reform which was announced by the government. Just an update here. The PMAY initiative, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, is a very important initiative of Government of India, which is being implemented as a sponsored model or a sponsored scheme where 60% of the funds are coming from the center, 40% from the states. In this, assistance, financial assistance is given to the beneficiaries to construct houses. It is an initiative to provide housing support. Now, what has happened? Listen to me carefully. What has happened is, in certain place in Tamil Nadu, government officials have colluded, and what were the actual names of the beneficiaries, they have removed, and they have added beneficiaries who have passed away. The beneficiaries who have already passed away, their names have been added. And multiple beneficiaries whose names were there, they also during the process have passed away. And these officials or corrupt officials have swindled away or taken away all the money that was supposed to be allocated or given to these, right, let's say passed away beneficiaries. And this instance of corrupt practices, remember this, because many of you will ask me, sir, government is implementing multiple schemes where the benefits are transferred directly to beneficiary. Is there a possibility of diversion there? Is there a possibility of misuse of the funds? Of course, yes. This is the prime example. This is essentially the prime example where the funds have been diverted, the funds have been misused or utilized for other purposes, which is not the intention of either the center or the state government. So, according to the investigations that have been conducted, more than 40 people who were supposed to be the beneficiaries under the PM Awas Yojana, they have either passed away during the implementation or they had already passed away before they were identified even as beneficiaries. And these officials from different levels have colluded, have violated multiple provisions, have not implemented many of these provisions where they are supposed to conduct, let's say, a survey. We are supposed to take the photos of the construction of the house and upload into a server, etc. They have violated many of these guidelines of the scheme and have taken away or swindled away more than 70 lakh rupees. More than 70 lakh rupees has been swindled away. And the investigations have been conducted and the government officials have been booked, right? Have been booked under multiple provisions. FIRs have been filed. So this is an update. Where, sir, where can I use all of this information? My dear, if you're talking about, let's say, effectiveness of the policies, if you're talking about implementation of the policies, if you're simply saying why we are not able to eradicate poverty in India, why there is a leakage in the system, you can quote this as an example. Okay, next, Supreme Court of India has dismissed a petition, has thrown out a petition which was demanding that we should go back to conducting elections using paper ballots. Right? The petition was that right now we are using EVMs, electronic voting machines. And as such, please understand, earlier also multiple petitions have been filed in Supreme Court of India regarding usage of EVMs and returning to the paper ballots. Supreme Court in April 2024 itself has dismissed multiple petitions that wanted certain restrictions or that wanted the introduction of a paper ballots, etc. And as such, understand this, as such, the Election Commission also has given a detailed document to the Supreme Court wherein they are basically saying there is no way, I repeat again, this is according to the Election Commission of India, there is no way that voting machine, that is electronic voting machine, can be tampered. It's a separate system, individual system, right, which doesn't have any kind of internet connectivity. There is no way you can tamper a EVM. But even then, in multiple instances, you might have seen many political parties raise concerns regarding the EVMs. In fact, the judge in the Supreme Court, right, basically was presiding over this case. The judge in the Supreme Court said, whenever politicians, right, whenever politicians lose elections, they tend to, right, argue that EVMs can be manipulated. For example, the SC said this. I hope you understand. The SC stated that when Mr. Chandrababu Naidu lost the elections earlier, he argued that EVMs have been manipulated. EVMs have been hacked. That's the reason I lost elections. And when now elections are conducted, the other candidate has lost the elections, right? Mr. Jagannath Reddy, who lost the elections, he is now castigating aspersions. He is casting aspersions on the EVMs. So the SC judge said, when you win elections, you do not raise any concern. When you lose elections, you are raising concerns regarding, right, let's say the electronic voting machines, and this is not right. This is not right. In fact, there is a very important statement. There is a blind distrust. I repeat, the SC judge says, there is a blind distrust, right, which is against the institution or a system. And this has led to unwarranted doubts, unwarranted skepticism against this kind of a system. Supreme Court also stated that we have already looked at what is the problem to going back to the paper ballots, the complicated system that it will lead to, the number of, let's say, the voting booths that we have. We cannot go back to the electoral voting. We cannot go back to the paper voting or paper ballot system. Hence, the petition that was filed was rejected by the Supreme Court of India. Done? Right? So, this is one more judgment where Supreme Court of India has upheld the importance of EVMs. Next, the concept of a no-fly list. Right? Listen to me very carefully. The government of India introduced, right, basically through DGCA. DGCA is the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, which is the regulatory authority. So, the government of India through DGCA back in the year 2017 introduced the concept of a no-fly list. What do you mean by no-fly list? If there is a passenger who is behaving unruly, right, who is inebriated, who is right, verbally abusing others, who is right, not behaving properly in a flight, etc., those kind of passengers can be put on a no-fly list. And when you put in, when a passenger is put in a no-fly list, it can be temporary, it can be permanent. Essentially, the practice is whenever such behavior is observed, the command of the flight, that is basically the pilot in command has to file a complaint. Then there is a panel which will investigate, and they will issue an order imposing certain restriction of so many days wherein the person will be put under the no-fly list. The argument of a petitioner, and understand this, there is a petition in the Supreme Court now. The argument of a petitioner is that whenever you have these kind of instances in the flight, even the flight personnel, that is the people from the company which is operating the flight, even they are not, right, they are not taking very good approach. They are biased here. In fact, there was an instance regarding which the case is happening now. There was an instance last year where a person in an inebriated state who had consumed a lot of alcohol is said to have urinated on an elderly person. And this elderly person said, the people in the flight, that is in the cockpit, the people who were present, the people who were supposed to help me, the airline personnel took a very cavalier approach. They did not clean the seat. They asked the old lady to sit on the same seat and travel, etc. They shared the contact number of the old lady with the right alleged person, or let's say the person who has committed this, and that person got in contact, were forced to come to an arrangement, etc. So argument, understand this, is that can we change the system of allocation of the seats in an aeroplane? For example, Supreme Court of India now is asking DGCA, can you have a new system implemented where only in certain places the old age or let's say the senior citizens will be made to sit? Can we have a separate area for only these particular people? That is one. And second one, can we change the approach in the no-fly list? Can we change the approach? Because right now we have a no-fly list. Multiple people have been placed under no-fly list, but this is not stopping the people from behaving unruly when the flight is taking place. So these are the questions which have been raised by the Supreme Court, right? And the DGCA has been asked to submit a report on this. Okay, last article for today, the Trump and the tariffs. Mr. Donald Trump has proposed to implement very high amount of tariffs once he becomes the president in the month of January, on China, on Mexico, and right on Canada. Right, the three important trading partners, he wants to target them, and right, he wants to impose very high amount of tariff. There is nothing new in this article. I just want to mention couple of points, because earlier videos also we have discussed what is the problem with this kind of a policy. But a very interesting point has been mentioned by Mr. Donald Trump. He accuses the companies in Mexico, that is the Mexico country, as well as China, for right, the epidemic in USA. He is accusing, right, China and Mexico for right, the epidemic in USA. That is basically, understand, there is a drug, right? There is basically a drug, fentanyl. There is a drug, fentanyl, right? It is a painkiller. And there is a very high number of cases where people have abused this kind of a drug, and in many of these cases, the people have passed away. People have died because of overdosage of fentanyl. So the argument that has been put forward by Mr. Donald Trump is that they are trying to basically supply more and more of this fentanyl into USA, and that is the cause of the abuse or the overusage of this kind of a drug. So I want to impose very, very high amount of tariff on Mexico as well as China. Why both of these countries have been named in case of fentanyl? Please understand, China supplies raw material which can be used to manufacture fentanyl. Mexico manufactures it and exports it to USA. So the argument of President of USA is that the problem is happening in USA because these are supplying more to USA. So I'll charge very high amount of tariff. In addition to this, illegal migration, immigration is also a very big point which has been raised by the President of USA to target Canada, to target the Mexico as well as right, other countries. Right now, in the proposal that has been given right by the next President of USA, right now India has not been targeted. India has not been targeted right now. But it is expected that once he becomes the president, there will be larger amount of tariffs which will be imposed even on the exports which are going from India to United States of America. So this is in a nutshell what has been provided in the article here regarding Trump and tariffs. Right, so the MCQ questions, MCQ 34, DPSPs, just like the fundamental rights, are legally enforceable? No, DPSPs are not legally enforceable. Part 3, Part 4 and Part 9B of Indian Constitution are associated with subjects DPSPs, FRs and cooperatives respectively. Underline the term respectively. Right, what is the importance of this? Part 3 is for fundamental rights. Part 4 is for directive principles. And Part 9B, yes, it is for cooperatives. The reason I said there is a connection to mentioning of the Part B here. Please make a note of this. There is an international association of cooperatives by the name of ICA. Remember this, International Cooperatives Alliance, ICA, International Cooperatives Alliance. It was set up for more, or it has been set up for more than 130 years now. For the first time ever, the ICA, the General Council meeting of ICA, took place in India. Very, very recently it has happened, couple of days ago itself. For the first time ever, the council meeting of ICA and the conference of ICA for the first time has taken place in India. So that can be a potential question in the prelims, and the cooperatives is mentioned under Part 9B of Indian Constitution. But anyways, Part 3 is FR, Part 4 is DPSP, right? It is exactly reverse here. The World Inequality Report is published by the World Bank. No, it is not published by the World Bank. It is published by a Paris-based agency by the name of World Inequality Lab. All the three statements are incorrect. Right option will be option D, none of the above. Next, MCQ number 35. The organ donations in India are regulated under THOTA 1994. Yes. A Transplantation Act of 1994. Yes. In eye donation, India is following presumed consent model since 1994. Wrong. Corneal tissues does not have any blood vessels. Yes. two of the statements are correct, right option will be option B for this kind of a question. Done? Right, so these are the various articles as well as the questions that I wanted to discuss with you people, not only from Hindu newspaper but also integrating concepts from the Hindustan Times as well. If you like this initiative, do hit the like button. And because there were no questions raised by you people in my last CNA, I have not taken up any questions in the Students' Corner today. But if you have any kind of questions, do let me know in the chat section of the video or the comment section of the video. If you're yet to subscribe to our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Thank you. Have a great day.